building trust in the workplace with hierarchical transparency. This is my first time. If I seem a little nervous, that's why. So I do want to start with a mindfulness exercise first. So my favorite one to use for myself is a Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, 2002 commitment address, pretty much exercise, mindfulness exercise. So I'm going to say his famous words, and hopefully you guys will indulge me or just kind of go with the flow with me at this point. So Fred, the person I want to be when I grow up, Mr. Rogers, says, I'd like to give you all an invisible gift, a gift of a silent minute to think about those who helped you become who you are today. Some of them may be here right now, some of them far away. Some, like my astronomy professor, may even be in heaven. But whatever they are, if they've loved you and encouraged you and wanted the best in life for you, they're right inside yourself. And I feel that you deserve quiet time on this special occasion to devote some thought to them. So let's just take a minute in honor of those that have cared about us all along the way, one silent minute. So I'll keep famous words, he says, I'll keep the time. And let's take that one person, that person who believed in you, who cared about you, for 1 minute. And I'll start the clock now. So let's come back. So whomever you've been thinking about, imagine how grateful they must be that during your silent time, you remembered how important they are to you. So it's not the honor or the prizes or the fancy outside life, which ultimately nourish our souls. It's the knowing that we can be trusted, that we never have to fear the truth, that the bedrock of our lives from which we make our choices is very good stuff. So I do that little exercise once in a while. I think about my grandmother. Sometimes I think about an uncle. Sometimes I think about people that have challenged me in the past and how I am grateful for them. So it's all aspects of, and feeling trusted, feeling, supported as well. So thank you guys for doing that with me. I really appreciate that. And yes, it works, especially with one-on-ones and having that quiet time and that peace. And starting off on the right foot, right? Sometimes we have that very weird experience where they come in hot and they're like, let's do mindfulness exercise, right? So yes, I was peer support. I worked with children. I worked with 𝗣𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗍, transitional age youth, as peer support. And I was a senior peer support specialist for a transitional age youth peer run clinic. So I've seen a lot. So let's start. So how do we build this, the trust in the workplace with hierarchical transparency? So I have chapters and sections. Please don't be scared about that. It's not a whole book, I promise. It's 3 chapters. Each one has like 1 to 3 sections, and it's just to organize myself. So chapter 1, trust and transparency. So the first thing we're going to talk about is peer support utilization of trust and building rapport. I've been watching the previous workshops. I picked a couple, and they talk about it very clearly. Like the utilization of trust and building rapport. You walk in, that's what we have as peer supports. We walk in, we start talking about, our stories and our challenges with these clients, but what do we do first? We actively listen to them. We want to hear their story on their, whatever they went through with their own words and their own perspectives. So that alone builds that you're actively listening. And that's a really important word, actively listening. You're looking at them, you're nodding, you're repeating some of the stuff that they're saying and getting into the conversation. So that's something that as peer supports, we do very well. The history of trust and peer support services, and then peer support specialists and supervisors in a workplace setting. So these are going to be the sections for chapter 1. So the first one, peer support utilization of trust and building rapport. So peers utilize transparency every time they meet with the people they serve. We're trying to get away here in Riverside of saying consumer. So it's going to be the people we serve. And then a lot of times in the PowerPoint, I talk about peers. It's going to be a peers of peers. So we're talking to family advocates, parent partners, and consumer peer support specialists. So yeah, usually every time with me, I can't think of a time where I wasn't actively listening, where there wasn't some form of transparency in meeting with someone. I'm not perfect. Sometimes, I would come in and I wouldn't be completely present, but I would have to work on that, right? That's something I had to be really transparent with that as well. The mutuality and empathy shown in peer support allows for rapport and trust to develop between both peer and the people they serve. This allows the ability to share more openly, knowing a level of understanding between both. Peers will continue to be allowed to provide trauma-informed and person-centered services. So a really good question right now I wanted to ask. So person-centered services, who's the person, right? Who are we talking about?
I'm sorry, was that a question to me?
Oh, it's okay. I'm trying to work the screen too. Show small speaker. Because I don't have like the thing at the bottom anymore.
Okay.
Let's see. Maybe. Oh, there it is. I found it. Okay. So in person-centered services, who's the person? It's a really easy question. All my questions are super easy. No, wait, who?
The peer that reporting.
Yes. The person that we serve. It's their service. They're running the show pretty much. Obviously we're there to guide them. We're doing with, not for. But yes, that person we're serving, that is the person that's centered around. Told you it was easy. Okay, so by sharing information of a similar experience with the person receiving services, it breaks down misconceptions of behavioral health services and its providers. So an example for that is, I talked about it in a different workshop earlier today. It was 𝗣𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 And I talked about how talking to somebody who is about to get 5150, who is about to get hospitalized, the fear, like the retaliation, the defensiveness is totally normal. So a lot of times clinicians would ask me as a peer support, like, help, help. And it was easy for me because I would, sit down and talk about that experience and how it happened to me. And then if that person is on your caseload, it's even more simple because you can go over it, making goals for them, meaning having that conversation of what it's going to look like, what you're going to go through. Like first this is going to happen, then that's going to happen. So it doesn't come as a full surprise that like 20 people like are on top of you and like trying to, get all this information out of you. They know it's coming. And then once they leave and are discharged, we make goals. We make a pretty much a recovery plan at that point, right? How are we not going to get back there? And if we do, we know, how we can stay safe. In my experience with hospitalizations, I was diagnosed at 21 with schizoaffective. So I was, seeing things that weren't there, hearing voices and so forth. But it was the anxiety part that would trigger every time. Anytime there was some sort of anxiety within me, it would just trigger that reaction of, psychosis. Once I started understanding like where I was and being able to maneuver myself, like I did notice I had more control and that gave me more peace. Okay, so peer support specialists are trained to know what to share and how. Peer support specialists will not add experiences that would further traumatize to take their focus from the client. So again, these are all how peer supports utilize trust and building rapport. So this is a really important one. This is part of our obviously core competencies and basic rules of peer support services, is that we do no harm, right? Just like everybody else, we do no harm. And what does that look like? So when you're sitting down talking one-on-one and having that meeting, a lot of times, well, this happened and that happened. And a knee-jerk reaction sometimes when you're having those conversations, like, oh, really? Well, this happened to me. And we need to kind of cut that right then and there. So this is not about like upping each other or just sharing war stories, because everybody has them. We have to be, again, actively listening, and we are trained to share our story the way it's supposed to be shared to help the other person. Peer support specialists understand the importance of trust in their recovery journey, trust with services, the people providing those services, and the support system that they develop. So we do understand how this works to our advantage in behavioral health services. You start telling them, you know, look, I did therapy. I took, you know, this and that. We don't talk about medication. So that almost slipped out of my mouth. We don't talk about medication. But but we talk about our experiences, and that gives, you know, the person that we're serving a little bit of ease onto furthering that service, or going into, you know, DBT, going into these serious issues with their clinicians and therapy. So has anybody experienced a time working with a peer support or a family advocate or a parent partner in which, you know, you see kind of a deeper level of understanding from the person you're serving or they're serving, a more understanding of their role in their recovery when working with a peer support? I know that's a long question. I can cut it down.
Go ahead and raise your hand, or your virtual hand, or on camera, and just go ahead and ask your question. I'm sorry. Answer the question.
Ask me a question. I think I can kind of restate it. So has anybody experienced a time working as a peer supporter with a peer support where you see that higher level of understanding of their role in their own recovery? I'm talking about like the consumer or the person they're serving, because of working with a peer support.
Ann Nicholson has a hand raised.
Yes, please, Ann. Thank you.
Yes, hi. So I have been working with some people as a peer supporter for a couple of years, the same person for a really long time like that. And, you know, it's really wonderful that even though they're also working with therapists, psychiatrists, that they can talk about stuff with me, you know, and we co-reflect on their journey together. And like, I try to not set myself up with expectations, right? Like their growth is going to be on a certain, like, you know, trajectory, because it has ups and downs all the time. But over this long time of working 2 years or so with the same people, it's beautiful to see those breakthrough conversations where they're like, oh, this is my life. This is my recovery. And like, I don't let it go to my head, because I know that's not me, that's them. But it's just beautiful to, you know, to see those moments.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Ann. I think somebody else had their hand up too. I'm not too sure. But yes. And that's where the trust is built, right? And where does the transparency come into? With that, we go blah, 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 blah. We go back to the first meeting where you build these boundaries, where you be completely transparent with them, saying like, you know, I'm not going to work harder than you. You know, this is your journey. I could walk with you, but I can't walk for you. So if there are decisions that you make, we can talk about them. And that's where the transparency comes in between the peer support, family advocate or parent partner, and the consumer, right? So we use this on the daily. They come in and they say, hey, you told me this. And we can go right back around and be like, okay, let's go back to that conversation. This was a decision, you made, and we can just work on it. I always tell my peers, and my seniors as well, like, you're never going to tell them you're going to do this. You're never going to tell them you're going to do that. But it has to be completely transparent and understand, like, they need to understand, like, this is your journey. This is your decision, because in the end, whose success is it, right? Like, it's going to be theirs. It's their journey. But thank you. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Oh, Lacey.
Yeah, I don't know. It was really cool working with a couple of my peers before. I used to have little notepads and we would write down what their goals were. And then it was whenever we met, it was like, okay, what's one step you can take towards it this week? And then if after they named something they could do, then I would say, what's one thing you think I can do to help you along this journey, type of thing, so that they knew that I was still involved and it wasn't just them, but they knew that they came first and that they steered it. And that seemed to work really well to get results on their goals and stuff. So yeah, and just gave them the okay to set that pace, because so much of the time when people are in the, I don't know, like the medical version of the system, I don't know, they feel kind of less than, and like they don't have a voice maybe as much, like they're broken, so they're going to get help and get fixed, so they don't, and so it's just a whole different realm to be able to be vulnerable with them and let them lead. And then also even just expressing bad days when we have them, not saying they're telling them everything we have going on, but letting them know it's okay to not be okay sometimes and stuff. Yeah. If they see that like we can struggle and still show up for ourselves and for them, then it's modeling that they can show up for themselves too.
Oh, yes. And it shows them that this is it's like a never ending story, right? Like,
Yep.
The song of it. But it's a beautiful story. That's one of my favorite movies, like the never ending story. And it's super cute and everything. But the thing is, that's life. It doesn't stop, and we never stop learning. And what if we just kept learning about ourselves, right? And what we can and cannot do, and those things that we can't do. Why? What's keeping me from that? I sound like a self-help person right now, but it's true. And I love that. And I learned, it was really clear for me working at Children's. I worked at Children's Treatment Services here in Riverside County for 6 years, I think, 6, 7. I always say it's like a year more. Every year is like I add another year, but it was like around 6 or 7. And we had the client family treatment meetings and things like that. And I got so obsessed with it because there was like a little flicker of like peer support services in those meetings. So you're, for the clinicians out there, I'm pretty sure you understand what I'm saying, where you take the client's goals that they created. They create these goals. I'll be surprised if nobody knows what I'm talking about. And then everybody involved in the team, everybody like the peer support, like the clinician or psychologist, the parents, the family, everybody involved, what is their role in that? But ultimately, in every single role is a role of support. It's not anybody taking the lead besides the client, right? And I really liked that. And sometimes they didn't like it either, but they didn't like it at all. But it showed them this is possible. And it's little things, getting up at 9 a.m. to, taking a shower every day. And I mean, these little triumphs are amazing to see. And love it. Anne?
I was just giving you a thumbs up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. So let's go on to the next section. So the history of trust and peer support services, we did talk a little bit about this already. In order to engage with the people they serve, the PSS will first focus on the rapport building, right? That's the first kind of thing we do, by actively listening, which allows the person to feel heard. Huge. They feel heard. And Lacey talked about that, feeling helpless, feeling hopeless, and, at the whim of, our therapists and our psychiatrists. For 10 years, I took medication. And when I was diagnosed at 21, I was in and out of mental hospitals and so forth. And I remember later on, my parents told me, when I was lucid enough, they told me that the doctor said that I would never work again. I couldn't have a family. I couldn't have kids, and that I would be put on Social Security, on disability. And that just leave me alone, let me live the life that I could live, right? Comfortably. So they did that. I was on SSI, SSDI. I did the same things over and over again. There's a really good video of a lady talking about, it was called her Coca-Cola and cigarette life, RUHS cycle. And I was like, wow, mine was Diet Coke, but it was Diet Coke and cigarettes, Diet Coke, and that was my being. And I was 21, I was 6 months away in my first episode from graduating from UC. And so everything was taken really fast, and this depression, this, feeling of failure came over me. I'm first generation Mexican American. So I failed completely. I failed on all sorts of levels. I failed as, the kid that was supposed to, make it. Like, this is a reason we came here. This is the reason you are that. And for me to feel this failure and possible like destruction of my family in my head, right? It was really hard. So I just accepted what they were telling me. And then I ended up at a nonprofit. I didn't have any drug problems or anything legal. It was literally just a mental break. I've always been even as a child, I was very goody and never tried drugs, never to this day, never had a beer. And it's not because I have an alcohol problem, it's because I hate the smell for some reason. I just can't stand it. But I do drink once in a while. But I'm not in the recovery where a lot of my coworkers are in recovery. Mine's strictly mental health. So anyway, going back to my point, going to these doctors, these therapists, these psychiatrists who are prescribing 8, 9 medications at a time, you're trusting. They're telling you, you need this, you need that, you need this much of that. And so going a decade, just going through that, cut to me being moved to a nonprofit because of the clinic where I was going to in Riverside became a full service partnership. So I didn't meet requirement. I was sent to a nonprofit, and that's where I met my first peer. So she was a behavioral health specialist, and she noticed me like talking to my friends, people in the clinic and so forth. And she says, why don't you go back to school? Like, I heard about your story. You need to go back. And I said, oh, no, that's funny. Like, I have schizoaffective. And she's like, okay, so? And I was like, no, they told me I can't go. I can't go back to school. Like, I'm here. I'm just living what I can. I like art, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's what I draw, I scribble, and I paint. That's it. And so she pointed to the wall and she said, that's my bachelor's degree. I'm on my way to get my master's. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Good for you. I thought she was kind of rubbing it in. I was like, suck. And she switched and she's like, and I also have the diagnosis of bipolar. And so that kind of, because I didn't never, put those two together. Like, somebody who is prescribing me medication and telling me what I have to do, also dealing with similar challenges. It blew my mind. So she helped me. She supported me in getting applications to get back into school. So ultimately I did. I ended up going on the PASS program from San Diego. I don't know if it's still around, but thank you. Somebody's connected to them, and graduated from UCR. And it happened. It would like blew my mind. So that is kind of an example of the communication and the actively listening, where she's listening to what I have to say, and also providing me with that support and encouragement, right? The empowerment to do it myself. So yes, let's go read it. I forgot where I was. PSS also focus on open communication, which at this point informs the people they serve of the expectation and boundaries, ultimately together developing a plan together for recovery that is designed by that person for that reason. So again, talked about that as well. These things are explained in the first session. Like I suggested to my peers and my seniors, anytime you meet with somebody, that first meeting, those boundaries have to be set. These rules of HIPAA, or just seeing each other out and about, we got to talk about that. And it's a reminder. You're going to keep telling them over and over again throughout the whole duration of the services, these boundaries. So peer support services specialists utilize trust daily in their services to assist people they serve in achieving their own goals in their recovery process. PSS share lived experience, work with, not for, the person and empower the person to lead their own recovery journey. Talk a little bit about that. Supervisors utilizing trust and transparency allows the PSS a sense of security, which decreases work stress and negative feelings about their workplace. It is understood that there is a limit to the transparency and communication as a supervisor. So moving into the history of like supervisor and peer team building, examples that I have are like working at a peer driven clinic and working with a supervisor side by side and what that looked like. It was a lot of open communication, talking about, the challenges that we were having and just problem solving that every single time we could. But has anybody else have examples related to kind of like the supervisor and the peer team building together to build anything, trust, open communication, anything like that? Any examples related to supervisor and peer relationships? I think that's an easier way of asking that. Could be good, could be negative, doesn't matter. John Fitzgerald.
My microphone's messed up. There we go. Yeah, sure. I think I sort of alluded to this earlier in another presentation, but our team all works from home. We're all peers, and we work all around New York State. So there's a lot of communication that we'd probably have otherwise that we don't have, and so due to that, there can be miscommunications, but also and part of the reason that comes up is because we try to do things that are utilizing the strengths of different peers in our program, because we do trust them, and we want to work to everybody's strengths, and where people have weaknesses, we want to help them. So we create new positions that can work around that. And then, like, for most recent example, since we do all work across the state, we all got together at our team leads retreat and got our planning for the next year, and get everybody back on the same page. And it's just great to be able to do that.
Yes, I love that. That's awesome. So like team building, continuously team building. Oh, awesome. I remember we had kind of a similar thing when we worked at Children's. Actually, we got in trouble one time. We had like a yearly team building thing, like a retreat sort of for the whole clinic. And we decided to do equine therapy. So like and mind you, we're peer run, like we're all peers. There was like 10 peers and 2 therapists and a supervisor. Like that was the clinic. So tell me why that didn't work. Anyways, there's nothing to do with peers, believe me. Ooh, that was like what is that one book? Lord of the Flies? Like that was just, we're all young. But anyways, we decided to do equine. And we thought that's amazing and works great with our, with our clients. We should all do it. And we really need this team building. And so we go not knowing that, yeah, it's not good to close a clinic to go play with horses for a day. So we literally just left. And thank God our manager was with us, because she, oh, well, it's just for like 5 hours. It's fine. So she stuck up for us. It was really, really good. But I still remember it. And it was like in 2011.
And there's that trust.
And I still talk to these people. We haven't worked since like 2000, like those times, and we still have that connection. It works amazing. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
Since nobody else is answering, I'll just take this opportunity to share the great trust that I have felt that I've been given. Like, I'm somebody who I've been in recovery since July of 2021. And before that, I was just in active substance use disorder and mental health problems and all that. But while I was in recovery and in inpatient and outpatient treatment, I realized, I have a passion for this peer thing, and I want to give back to that community. So I was fortunate enough to be hooked up with my, at the time, my addiction medicine doctor's sister, and who's now my supervisor, which is really cool. But like, they put a lot of trust in me, because unlike basically everybody else on our team, I have 0 qualifications. I have, to put it simply, nothing but life experience. And there's a lot to offer there, but you definitely, one has to put a lot of trust in somebody to say, hey, come and be responsible for helping other people, even though, there's nothing that should make me convinced otherwise, on paper, other than what you're showing to me as a person. So I just have really appreciated that. And
yeah, the whole on paper thing. On paper, I'm rich. I'm not. So like the whole like on paper, I look amazing, and I never take those two the same. But isn't that scary? Like that whole mentality of coming in. We're going to talk about that in the next slide. How we come in to a job like a peer support, specialist, and now we're in charge of other people. That's the trick question. We're not. And that's what I try to get to full transparency, with my staff, is like, I learned this a long time ago. We are not in charge of them. We are not this, make it or break it person in this person's recovery. And I don't want them to think that, because that's how we felt coming up in recovery. Like, there's that one person. And I even talked about, mine, but it was the person who opened my eyes. It wasn't the person who held on to me for dear life until I made it. Like, no, it was just that person who opened the door just a little where I can peek in. But yeah, I always say, like, that's the trick. Like, that's the trick question. Like, now, like, I can't even, it took me this long to get a hold of my own sanity. Like, now I got to help other people with it. And it's not about that. It's kind of the guidance of it. It's more of like a highlighted, bold term. But yeah, let's talk about, oh wait, did I finish the other one? Yes. So let's talk about that. In section 3, peer support specialists and supervisors in a workplace setting. So PSS stigma in the workplace from the PSS point of view. And this is what you were talking about, John. So feeling a failure from the start, like right when we get there, we're feeling like, okay, this is a fluke. They made a mistake. I probably got, like, I'm right under the radar of this. And how did this happen? Like, okay. And these are just insights, right? Of other people, myself, and, people I've spoken to have been here a long time. So I know these are really common themes with our own stigma. And then pressure to overachieve, overcompensation, which might lead to burnout. We're always talking about burnout with us, because we want to overdo it, overachieve, overcompensate, because we know our faults. We know our history and our past, and how, maybe a couple of years ago, we weren't the best version of ourselves. So we overcompensate for that. And that leads to burnout. That leads to, you know, me having somebody just start and they're hitting 80% direct service time. And I'm like, that's a huge red flag for me. And it's because there has to be kind of like a balance where, where's your self-care? Where is your self-care? And so I yell at them. I remember just yelling at her like, you, but like a kind of like an angry little, like a big sister, like, you need to take care of yourself. I need this to stop because I love it. Yes, you know, we're up there, but where are you? Where is your self-care? Self-doubt and the imposter syndrome. Everybody faces these, everybody, right? It's just not only specific to peer support services, but everybody goes through that self-doubt and imposter syndrome. I'm a girl who, you know, was diagnosed with something that I shouldn't have recovered from, right? From certain people's perspectives, that it was maybe you're not really diagnosed with that. I was told by a clinician that I worked with in my first clinic. You know, I was probably a couple months in and a clinician told me like, I don't think that's your diagnosis. You like present really well. You speak very clearly. You don't get really and it's so like that broke my heart. Like automatically that imposter syndrome was fact. You know, I am an imposter. And it really like that alone taught me like a lot about self-advocacy and talking and speaking for myself and you know, being able to say, no, I did. Like you just invalidated all my challenges at that point. Thoughts and feelings of the other shoe dropping. Like, this is amazing. I have this wonderful position where I get to help people every day. You know, and nobody else would understand. Like the whole, like the supervisors or the clinicians, like they wouldn't understand this struggle. They wouldn't understand me feeling overwhelmed. And then, you know, how would they know? How would they know? They wouldn't know. And these are thoughts from a peer support point of view. The shame and insecurities to share challenges to supervisors. So big flashing lights on that one. There's a lot of shame and insecurity in sharing our challenges, sharing, you know, our diagnosis, because I don't know, like everybody that I know has more than one. So mine is schizoaffective, which is an anxiety mood disorder, but I have anxiety and I have GAD, you know, and there was a lot of like little access twos in there. And so I'm not, you know, I'm not going to like, here's my resume and this is my diagnosis list. You know, it's not really easy to do that. And why? Why? Because we see that as being vulnerable, you know, and maybe now we're going to have like the supervisor looking out for us and, you know, you know, scenarios. But these are things that we do feel in the workplace sometimes. And then lack of recognition of vulnerability as a strength. So going back to not sharing these challenges with our supervisors and our higher ups, because we see it as vulnerable. Okay, it's vulnerable. That's a strength. We can do that. We can be in a place where we are vulnerable and still get our job done. We can be a little bit more sensitive and empathetic towards our consumer and still get positive results. And any comments, questions, or concerns? I keep forgetting to stop and ask. Okay. So supervisor stigma in the workplace. I keep hitting my desk. I'm so sorry. Supervisor stigma in the workplace from supervisor's point of view. So again, let's flip the coin. So how is the supervisor stigma in a workplace from a supervisor's point of view toward working with peer support specialists? So looking with supervisor eyes. Misunderstanding, being unclear of peer support services and core competencies. So, short story, I promise. I worked at a place at Children's, my first real where I learned about like professionalism and, you know, what I wanted me to be as a peer support was working with children's treatment services. It wasn't my first job as a peer, but it was the one that really built me. And the first the first supervisor was really understanding of what peer support was. And if, you know, she didn't understand something, she didn't care, right? She was just like, yeah, just do this, do that. But she liked it. She knew it worked. She just didn't care how it worked. She loved the fact that we got them in the seats, that we got them into therapy, and they loved it, but not really understanding what the process was. So she left, and then another person came, another supervisor came, and he had no idea how to work with peers. He was just like, oh my God, like this is my first time working with a peer support. He sat me down. I was the only peer support there. And he told me, teach me, tell me what you do, and tell me how I can utilize you. And I did, and it was really easy, and it worked so well. And he gave me that trust. Like he automatically said, like, she knows what she's talking about. And I would bring up groups. I would bring up graduations or field trips and things like that, and how it would work out. I would give him curriculum for new groups, and he just would look at it and be like, he would understand. It was easier for that communication to go back and forth, because now he understood the goal of what I was doing there. And then risks in utilizing PSS. And we did talk about this. He didn't have the fear of relapse with me, but I have talked to, you know, other supervisors that, like, sometimes, you know, working with peer support, and this is back when things have changed tremendously in Riverside University Health System. We are embedded in services, and I couldn't ask for anything better. But a lot of times it's that relapse, right? Somebody who's been, you know, has that history of substance use and are clean and have all this time, and then start working with new challenges, new stressors, new triggers, and that fear of relapse. Again, you know, a peer's a peer's a peer. You know, we peer each other. We talk to each other, and we try to support one another here as well. PSS being unclear of how to work in a clinical setting. Yes. So that was difficult to really kind of go through. A lot of times learning through experience, because there was no trainings back in the day to become a peer support. It was a lot of shadowing and things like that. We had to learn by mirroring or shadowing, and even, you know, behaviors of clinicians started to kind of, you know, stick to us, and that wasn't okay. So we started delving more into what these peer services did mean and what we did have to provide. And we weren't little clinicians. We were our own driving force. PSS and ability to understand hierarchical standards. So again, these are certain stigmas that pop up. And then supervisor wearing their therapist goggles. I could not tell you how many times I was given free therapy working. So I was told I was misdiagnosed. I was, you know, given free therapy and whatnot. But it's because in the beginning, and maybe sometimes still today, like, we walk in, you know, into this work setting, and the supervisor puts on their therapy goggles, and starts trying to not fix, but like trying to get to what the root is, right? And try to see, like, oh, you know. And I've had it many times because I do present well, and because I did a really good job at saying, you know, for forever, before I even got diagnosed, I've had what I had since I was a child, but I just knew what to say and how to do it where nobody asked questions. So presenting, right? Passing, sometimes we call it. And so it freaks some supervisors out, like back in the day, where I would just do my job and do it well and not show any challenges. Wow. I was trained really well. Awesome. Any questions, concerns, or comments? All right, chapter 2. I promise there's only 3 chapters. There's 3. What does transparency with a peer look like? So we're going to talk about effectiveness of communication and avoiding workplace hierarchies. Section 2, don't get scared. I will explain it. I scared my boss when I told her section 2 of chapter 2. So there's no way we can work without, so let's talk about that when we get to it. So effectiveness of communication. Increase in communication will include many practices. Doo-ba-doo, I lost my place. Oh, which include, sorry. So increase in communication will include many practices, which include frequent meetings with staff meetings, one-on-one supervision will give staff a platform to share concerns and give feedback. So yes, we all have our meetings already set, but I always increase like just one more. Like if they want, like, let's do this like once a month, I'll make it 2. And just to give them that option, just to have it there. And it's not like you have to meet, I want them to have the option. Oh, Anne said another issue can be supervisors who approach supervision in more of a business management way, program administrators, for example. Yes. Money, 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 money. Yes. So huge. If it's direct service time or presentation and things like that, huge. So I would come into meetings and be like, my whole staff was above average. It was like, as peer supports here in Riverside, they only have to do 50% direct service time. So that's like one-on-ones, going out and about, and that's for Medi-Cal purposes, right? It's money. So my highest was like at 86 and my lowest was like at 67. So huge stuff, right? And most of the clients were FSP, full service. So they had like high risk, higher level of care, and things like that. So we're raking it in a peer-driven, innovative program. Like they didn't understand, like, how did you do that? That's all they wanted to talk about. And it wasn't like, no. And so at this point, I was only a senior. So for them to kind of just keep pushing that, no, we need to kind of slow down and, let's talk about more one-on-one issues. I completely get that. Thank you. Okay, frequent meetings with staff. Yes, I give them 2 dates a month. One is required, one's not. So they kind of get to pick and choose, and they can get both, and give them that option to come in and talk to you. I think it's super important. And that little half an hour to 45 minutes, we all, I know some people are like back to back. I am as well. I'm learning that. I've only been a supervisor now since January, end of December, I think, or mid-December. So Jesus. But at the same time, it's like I try to give them and promise them those time slots. Exercising these meetings with transparency means empowering staff to share honestly in a professional manner, validating their concerns and questions, and allowing problem solving as a team. So this second part, this exercising these meetings, that mostly talks about staff. I'm talking about staff meetings. So with going from bi-weekly or monthly week to shorter meetings, so going back to the first one, that works. And then during team staff meetings, talking about what they want to talk about, giving them their time. So I'll always have an open forum that's like 15 to 20 minutes. And if it goes up, it goes up, the time frame. I know a lot of you are probably like, well, I don't have time. We don't have, it's very strict. Creating an open forum time slot does promise you that they're going to get their time. A lot of times that will be a priority above something that is going to happen months from now. Like if every single thing on your agenda for your team meeting or your staff meeting is like, now it has to be done. I understand that. But also every month shouldn't look like that, and giving them those 15, 20 minutes for open forum, for sharing what's going on, and you actively listening, it gives them that, feeling that our consumers get, the feeling, that I was talking about in the beginning, where like they feel that connection, right? obviously in a professional manner. So one-on-one supervisions will allow for open feedback from both staff and discuss challenges participating from PSS and goal setting, expectations and discussion. So let's go back to the one-on-one. Megan, I am so identifying with everything you're, oh, thank you. I'll read that later. Yes, very important, very important. So yes, going back to the one-on-ones. So the one-on-ones, goal setting. So this is where, we're building the trust by listening, by being engaged in these conversations. Where is the transparency? So the transparency is mostly seen in the one-on-ones. So your goal setting, right? Again, going back to how we work with our consumers, you're being honest. You're being honest about what you can and cannot do in supporting this person, supporting your staff, and everything from, okay, probation's almost coming up. I've seen it too many times with peer supports, family advocates and parent partners that are peers at heart, but not professional workers yet. They don't have that. So a lot of times there's this mentality of you have it or you don't. I didn't have it. I've been everything from a hippie to a hipster. I don't, very late 90s, early 2000s, very, hipster kind of person. And I didn't believe in this. I didn't believe in like telling you what to do and the hierarchy and so forth. So to change that mindset, it took a very lovely lady, Sue Moreland, that she was the head of this nonprofit that really helped me. She took me under her wing. So she's like, you gotta take that green nail polish off. That blue hair has to go back to normal. We got to take this one out. And, all my facial rings and whatever. And she did challenge me. So she taught me. And I always compare it to like in the movies where they have like the makeover from like Princess Diaries or something, or like teaching her how to use a spoon or whatever. So we kind of go to that and be like, oh man, documentation, I can't cuss, stuff like that. Very, very important. But we can help as supervisors, right? That's our job. And I feel that every supervisor is a staff development officer in a way, right? Like everybody, we are developing our staff to do the best they can. So open feedback. We're not going to like rip them apart, but we're going to professionally and empathetically, one, listen, and two, have these discussions of where their challenges are. What are the challenges? Is the documentation? I have a degree from UCR in English. I've written 10, 15, 20-page reports. And I could not get documentation for Medi-Cal. Again, I felt like a total failure, but like I was wanting to scream, like how can I be able to write a novel, but I can't write a note about an 8-year-old? It was gnarly, but like at the same time, that wasn't in me. I hadn't learned yet. And I was very, very lucky to get supervisors that understood that challenge and guided me, telling me what Medi-Cal wanted to hear and like step by step, right? This is kind of what I'm talking about. Telling our staff the expectations. Where do you want to be? Developing these goals in 2, 3, 4 months. Where are you going to be? 5, 6, 7 years. Where are you going to be? How do we get there? Same thing with our consumers, right? Same thing as a peer support working with the consumer. We talk about how are you going to get there? What are you going to do and how I can support you in getting there? It sounds very simple. It sounds very basic. Not everybody does it. All right, let's move on. How are we on time, Brian? I got like 4 more slides. I can't hear you.
About 20 minutes.
Okay. I think I'm okay.
Yeah. Right. I'm really enjoying the presentation.
Oh, yay. Okay, thank you. And I was like, damn it, I didn't get no videos, no cool pictures. All right, so let's keep going. So section 2, avoiding workplace hierarchies. This is the one I've been wanting to talk about because it's clickbait. There's always going to be hierarchies. There's always going to be that like ladder, right? The thing that like us hipsters do not like. Everybody's the same. Everybody's equal. I'm the same as you, you as me. Until I get to this building, right? Until I have to like knock on my boss's door, you know? So understandably, we're unable to completely erase that, right? A hierarchical work platform, we have different responsibilities that are placed in supervisor positions to assist, protect, serve our PSS. So how do we develop a feeling of trust and transparency in the workplace without dismantling the hierarchy, without bringing the man down, right? Open door policy. I talked about it a little bit before, right? That open door, come in when you know, I've seen it so many times here throughout my career here in Riverside County, where the door's always open. To the point where now I'm a supervisor and when I close my door, I feel guilty. Because I've seen it so many times where my boss's door's always open. So I'm knock, knock, hey, and just like kind of walk in. And that's a level of like understanding. I knew that if the door was closed, it was serious. And then I figured out some supervisors just always have their door closed. And I never understood why. Again, I'm spoiled. I've been spoiled in my career. Giving credit to our staff projects completed. Read that wrong. Giving credit to our staff projects completed and goals achieved during staff meetings. So again, going back to the staff meeting. As a supervisor, we're running it, right? We're the ones managing what's going where, who's talking, you know, give them time frame. Why not use that? Why not praise? And why not give that validation to that hard work that they're doing? Open and out, not just on the one-on-ones, but open to everybody. And I feel that when that happens, it creates the ability for the other staff to feel comfortable enough to communicate positive feedback as well. So it kind of catches on, right? And so I do see that happen, especially working now in a building full of peer supports, only peer supports. I see that a lot. There's a lot of praise, a lot of positive feedback going back and forth. And it's not like, you know, I can't say it without like butt kissing. Is that appropriate? Is that okay? Like, I don't know how. Brown nosing. Okay. Like, don't cuss, don't cuss, don't cuss. All right. So brown nosing. Yes. And it's not like that. It's really authentic. And again, part of our core competencies, we have to be authentic. We have to know how it's going to sound. Authenticity is something that we work and strive for. It's part of our core competencies, right? Open communication, active listening, and validation. Again, going back to the validation with that open communication. I'm pretty sure most of you have seen what active listening looks like, and it's not what I used to get, which is like on the computer. Okay, and then what happened? So that's not active listening. That is what I was used to for many, many years. So when I finally had a conversation with a peer, it was 1, awkward, and 2, uncomfortable, and 3, I liked it. I liked it. They were listening. They were there. They were present. And it changed everything. It changed the dynamic of the relationship I had with this person and the respect given. The respect I gave them just for giving me my time and giving me my space, right? So giving information such as assisting staff in locating union representatives, contact information, and directing staff on how to retrieve information about the organization. That's where the transparency is. We have to let them know. You know, a lot of times we don't know anything about our unions. We don't know anything about, you know, representatives and, you know, who's what, where, whatever, and departments. Why? Like, we're not gatekeeping. It just never comes up. Okay, but what if you made it a point to let them know? Because again, these are questions they probably never asked. Like, okay, what is, you know, do I have a 401k? Wait, what is a 401k? You know, and then that transparency of like, you have choices. These are your resources. Just like we give our consumers resources, these are our staff's resources. And being open with them. So same goes for bad news. Oh, I had to write that down. Same goes for bad news, open communication, active listening, and validation. So when you're giving them the bad news, of like, hey, you got like this much time left on your probation and it's not really looking good. What can we do? What are the challenges? Tell me how I can support you. And actively listening to those challenges, problem solving together. This also works during the staff when issues do come up. And there is that open communication of like, okay, I'm listening, you know, I'm engaged in this conversation. So let's all problem solve together. And though that communication ends up coming like alive into the clinic itself, when it's easier for them, it's just practice for them to just problem solve together as a team. Am I making sense? Okay. Okay, go back. All right, so let's go. Chapter 3, last chapter. Yay! I told you it was only 3. So last but not least, right? The future of PSS and behavioral health services. So we're going to talk about taking the peer lead when hierarchy makes itself known. And it's not a bad word. Hierarchy is not a bad word, even though in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, it's fine. If it's transparent. And then section 2, how certification assists in this process. And section 3, continuing transparency in the workplace. Okay. So taking the peer's lead when hierarchy makes itself known. What happens when a PSS empowers others on the team to utilize transparency in the workplace? I'll actually just talk a little bit about this. So utilizing open-ended questions during staff meetings. I just talked about this. I'm so sorry. This is the first time I do this presentation. I wrote it myself, but I'm like, oh yeah. Utilizing open-ended questions during staff meetings can invite more viable discussion on team environment. Feedback will become more expected and welcomed. So continuing that open communication during staff meetings, you know, welcomes more. It brings up more feedback. This will also develop problem solving skills as a team and highlight strengths in the office from the staff. So we met when I worked at Children's. We met once a week on Tuesdays for 4 hours at a time. That was huge. We were staffing a lot. I know when I see people like, oh, I have like a 2-hour meeting, and then I'm like, we used to do it for 4 hours once a week. But it was great. I learned a lot during those staff meetings because it's not just about staffing and like trying to get it done as quickly as possible. That's a really good place to start your team development, your team, you know what I mean? Okay. So that develops them going like, okay, so this is how we're going to solve the problem. I know that like Joe is really good at talking to like little boys, you know, like he always talks to them because he has small boys. So it's easier for him to, you know, get them to open up. You know, we have our parent partners that are amazing with resources. You know, I was the one that was like very like artsy fartsy resources and just like out and open and so someone's mowing their lawn. I think. So next up, empowering other staff to self-advocate. So that's what happens when we empower others in the team to utilize transparency in the workplace. We empower other staff to self-advocate. We do it naturally. It's in our blood at a certain point. As a peer support specialist, we advocate. We are taught to advocate. At least in Riverside County, we are drilled in to like advocate for ourselves and our needs, however, in a professional and a diplomatic way, right? When a peer role models patience and kindness at work, it is done in a professional way, which other staff can possibly be struggling in doing. So a lot of time, like I said, the first time I was kind of called out and told I wasn't challenged enough, which is weird, right? They didn't know me. And so I was really, really scared to like say anything to this clinician that like, hey, you just literally told me I'm not sick. You told me I'm not I didn't go through this. Like you just cleared out my challenges like it never happened. And so I had to learn how to speak up and say, I felt invalidated. I felt disrespected. I felt like you know, everything I've done to get where I'm at. No, didn't happen. Shouldn't have done it. And I learned how to say that in a professional way where I was respected and also heard. And props to that supervisor that taught me that. Role modeling and building a path to ability to yeah. Is that where it was? Yeah. Role modeling and building a path to the ability for others in the team will assist with decreasing stress levels at work. Oh my God, yes. So being able to role model that now, where we have those open communication and like very clear conversations, it decreases stress levels. They're not scared to tell me that, like, hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, because we have had these conversations before. We understand and we share similar experiences. So now when they tell me, you know, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I really don't think I can do this. So we try to support them, you know, and in problem solve it. But at least they're not scared to communicate it, right? PSS will be utilizing techniques to develop self-advocacy through the gentle curiosity and kind assertion. I love that. Gentle curiosity and kind assertion. Education and communication of everyone's duties and responsibilities. So this is huge. Peer support services is not new. So we're not new, but however, it is also not as common to see in every behavioral health clinic. There's still, even in Riverside County, there's still clinics where, you know, you don't have peers. In allowing the PSS to inform of their duties and responsibilities, it will empower other staff to do the same. So this will clear the waters on responsibilities, expectations, and the ability to use each other, to utilize each other's services. A level of understanding will also allow others to highlight strengths and achievements, which will then develop more positive environment in the workplace. So it's pretty much all that, what I just said right now, is me trying to tell everybody, like, let's give a presentation. I'm a very presentation person, I guess. But going back to when I worked at Children's, again, that's the place, I don't know if you can tell through me talking about it like every minute, that's where I learned a lot. And because I got that trust from my supervisor, I was able to brainstorm things, just create things and like try this out, try that out and see what sticks. And one of them was every year we all had to go during staff meeting, we had like maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes max to explain what we do and how we can be utilized and what our strengths were. So it's pretty much like a rundown of like what I do here. And it was because in a children's clinic, or the one I worked at, we had a lot of interns. They were like kind of revolving door of interns. And so, yeah, we had the same people over the years, and they're like, well, here we go again. Let's understand it, talk about peer support. But it was a reminder as well for them that not only am I awesome and like getting like flex funds, I can do great groups. I'm able to talk to parents, grandparents. I speak Spanish, you know, like utilize me. And also my strengths. I love being in front of people. I love, you know, role modeling what positive behavior looks like. I love developing and creating things. And so when I would talk about that, that kind of sticks. And then we would hear, let's talk about Joe again, because he's awesome. And Joe would talk about what a therapist does. What do we do? What is DBT? What is this like trauma therapy? And like, why do my client has to like tell their horrible story in front of somebody every month? Like, explain it to us. And that level of understanding lets us know, okay, like everybody's connected. We can all use each other. We can all utilize these strengths and understand. And then it highlights, you know, we can now highlight other people's strengths when we do staffing. Like Maria, she was amazing with the parents. She did this, this, and this. So we would kind of give each other props. And it was easier that way because we knew what they were doing, right? We saw it. 2, how certification assists in this process. So it becomes a mirror. So now I am the staff development officer for education and training at this point. So we work really closely with 𝗣𝗲𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 and certification. I handle all the trainings, you know, I didn't make them, but I'm like, they're here this month, that month, we're here, we're doing this specialized trainings, code of ethics training I just did the day before yesterday. Sorry. And so certification is changing things, and I'm getting a really close look at how and why. So it becomes a mirror in these clinics. Certification will deconstruct bias and preconceptions on both sides. So we talked about the biases, right, prior. And so PSS, we've been the new kid in class for a lot of years. We're seen as paraprofessionals, and we're given a position. I've heard that a lot of times too. You're given this position, not earned it, because we didn't go to school, right? Another thing, going back to like we failed from the get-go. PSS have been preconceived as uneducated and needed to be watched very closely. Certification will legitimize peer support services, right? We're legit now, and highlight the role of peer support specialists have played in the advancement of behavioral health services. Yes, Teresa.
Yes, I would just like to say we have earned this. We have earned this from our lived experience. And through every training I have ever gone through, I am also a KDAC and have been for many, many, many years. I had to go to school for that. And then plus with my own life experiences, I have earned every bit of this. So
yes, thank you, Teresa. Yes, yes, yes. Again, we're seeing kind of through the scope of people who are not as involved in peer support services at this point. But we know the truth, right? I'm trained in everything from ED, you know, with eating disorders and transitional age youth, psychosis. We do a lot of AI stuff here at Riverside County with psychosis and things like that. But we earned it. We earned it. We're here. But the certification does help with making us look a little bit more legitimized, right? PSS will also have an understanding of continued education, right? We didn't know what that looked like before, of continued education, because clinical staff have to do that. They've always had to do. They have always been doing that. I don't even know how I'm still talking right now. And to continue working in behavioral health. The role and responsibilities of clinical staff will now be highlighted to peer support specialists. So that journey that every 2 years with clinical staff, we're seeing that. Now we're seeing their kind of flip of the coin, right? This level of understanding will create better partnership between PSS and clinical staff. Or maybe I'm just too naive and too positive, I think. But I think this is going to give us a perspective that we didn't have before, which then will develop in a learning opportunity of to identify the unique role of each of us. So section 3, last one, continuing hierarchical transparency in the workplace. So we did it. We did it. There's transparency in the workplace. We did it by building our trust. So what do? We continue to be utilized, not only to provide services to consumers, but also to unite and develop a more positive workplace. They gain confidence to move forward in their career. Again, I graduated from UCR with a degree in English. Have I ever used it? No. I'm very happy where I'm at. I have yet to use my diploma for anything but a paperweight, and that's okay because I really enjoy being a peer. This was a blessing in disguise, right? But yes, Teresa, I earned it. I earned this title as a supervisor. From every struggle, from every challenge, from the get-go, I've earned it. And then upward trajectory of career goals will introduce a new generation of supervisory staff, right? A more united and fulfilled staff. Hierarchy transparency in the workplace will increase productivity, develop nurturing, positive workspace, and a higher standard of care, because that's what matters, right? That's what counts. We need this higher level of care. So, So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. My name is Sandy Murillo. I am the Staff Development Officer for Education and Training, Peer Services. But above all else, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, but I'm a peer above all else too. So thank you so much for being here with me.